Welcome to the Ralph Bivens Project. We're here today to talk with one of the most experienced guys in commercial real estate industry in Texas. He's done some phenomenal deals that made a big difference in what's happened here and what's been built here. And he's got a lot of insight into what people think about major scale investments right now. Who wants to buy an office building right now? What's the pitch for buying retail? He's done it all with major institutional investors that are buying these properties that we drive by every day. Rusty Tamlyn. He's senior managing director of JLL Capital Markets, and he's been in Houston for quite some time, and his began, I guess, at CBRE back in the 70s, and when CB Richard Ellis it was at that time probably, and then Cushman and Wakefield, HFF, Holiday Faneuil Fowler, which of course was merged into JLL a couple of years ago. So anyway, we're Rusty. Welcome. We appreciate you taking time to talk with us and everything. And I know you're going to be moving on to a different career pretty soon, and that's we'll miss you, but we'll still call you and say, hey, what do you think about this every now and then?
Well, I didn't think I was going to be in the real estate business for 42 years, but native Houstonian, then went to the University of Texas, and of course Houston was blowing and going in the late 70s. In fact, just had dinner last night with Bill Smith and his wife. Bill was my mentor at CB many years ago, and he's I've tried to mentor a lot of young kids in the industry because it's part of my give back. But it's been a great ride, and but I'm ready to get off the roller coaster, the real estate roller coaster.
Yeah, Houston has changed a lot. What do you think about just big picture of the city of Houston? I mean, of course, it had like a tiny population compared to where we are today, but what's really changed? What are the big changes that you've seen for Houston over the years?
It's interesting because I've sold property and with an international firm, and so have a pretty good perspective of how investors and buyers view Houston. It's frustrating because it's probably the most misunderstood large city in the country. So many people still think that the price of real estate in Houston goes up and down with the price of oil and gas, and it's just not true. I mean, back when I got in the business in 1978, the dependency of Houston on oil and gas was 85%. Now it's more 30-35%. So Houston's more tied into the national and really international economy, and it's the three legs of Houston are oil and gas, obviously, the medical center, and the port, all of which are doing very well right now. But unfortunately, a lot of people's perspective of Houston is what they see from the national media, which is the Harvey flooding, the freeze that Texas went through, where basically a week of productivity cost billions of dollars for the state. And then, unfortunately, this week the water situation,
National news.
How can what's going to be the third largest city in the country lose its water capacity? So it's frustrating, but a lot of them feel like we need to more planning. We don't have zoning. But if you look at Houston, it doesn't look that much different than any other major city. The advantage of no zoning is that you can change uses quicker. In some cities, it takes 3 years to change zoning, and by that time, the market may have changed. Here, you can tear down an old industrial building close, in the shadow downtown and convert it to mixed use, in very short order. So, but the disadvantage, people feel like we don't have enough planning and enough infrastructure.
Well, right now, with the thing that's been mentioned a lot is the conversion of office, which we have plenty of vacant office space here, into residential, which, we all could always use more places to live. That's been talked about a lot. And I don't know, but if you had some stricter zoning in place, which we do not have, I don't know how easy that'd be. It surely would take longer to accomplish than it does right now.
Sure. Well, of the four major food groups, office is the one that's struggling the most in terms of vacancy, and that's an issue nationally. A lot of it's driven around COVID because I see it in our office here. A lot of people work from home, and when we consolidated, we took less space. So a lot of companies are renewing leases and taking less space because their people may only be in the office 3 days. We've all learned how to, work from home or work remotely. Really, my iPhone is my office today, and it goes with me. And so, that's just a fundamental long-term change. So, saw Greenway Plaza, for instance. I mean, CPPIB, a major Canadian pension fund, and the old teachers, which is Naveen now, they're defaulting on that loan. They put hundreds, lots of money into that property, paid a big number and then put a lot into infrastructure. So it's going to create opportunity.
Does that include, what does that include? The Naveen property?
Well, Naveen, really the major investor was CPPIB, Canadian Pension Fund. Naveen was a minor investor with them, but that's all of Greenway Plaza, 4 million square feet of office. And so that's a CMBS loan that's, I don't know, I just saw 465 million or so that they defaulted on. So there's going to be more, but not all office buildings can be converted to multifamily. 3 Westlake was a good example that sold for $300 a foot a few years ago, full with credit and term tenants, and then just recently resold for $50 a foot with structured garage, Class A building to a multifamily. But I don't know all the specifics, but a lot of it's the bay depth of the building and the floor plates and that kind of thing. But it's not an easy conversion, and it's pretty costly to do. But certainly that's a challenge for Houston. We have a number of them. I mean, one of them to me is just leadership. I would love to see a guy like Rick Campo, a business person like a Bob Lanier that we had way back, who was a Democrat, but a proactive person that has business experience and leadership. We have a lot of major companies here, but for whatever reason, maybe the strains of running major companies, you don't see that many business leaders engaged in the political process. And a lot of real estate developers have found out the hard way, even though we don't have zoning, you better engage the community where you're going to build a project, because they do have input and can impact the success or failure of your project. The Ashby high rise was a good example.
That was a tough deal to do. What about going? There's been a story in the paper last couple of days about the people that might run for office. Including State Senator John Whitmire and some others. But I have heard you're not the first guy to say Rick Campo. He did a great job with the Sports Authority, building the downtown arena for the Rockets and stuff like that. Plus, he's the chairman of the Port of Houston, and that seems to be coming along. Have you talked to Campo about making a run for office?
Well, it's a tough decision. I'm sure people have approached him, but it's a lot different running the Port or the Houston First than being the mayor of a major city. There's a lot of downside of politics, which is why a lot of really good people don't run. But if you look at the history of Houston, it was a swamp-infested marshland that the Allen brothers founded, and Galveston really should be what Houston is. But the hurricane in 1900 in Galveston killed a lot of people, and but we've had tremendous leadership. The medical center was established by business leaders that assembled land, and it's now the largest medical center in the world. Same with the airport. And so I think we need more forward-thinking, long-term folks, because we've grown and are going to continue to grow. There's a certain inertia when we have a lot of interesting, but we don't convey the message. A lot of people are frustrated with the partnership in terms of we should become the alternative energy capital of the world. Wind, solar, green, not just energy capital. We don't want to be like the horse and buggy that that went out of business. Exciting thing. I just saw something on BizNow where there was a report, I think from Newmark, talking about the life science. Life science is a huge opportunity for Houston. If you Google life science, the top 10 cities in the United States for life science, Houston's not in it, which is crazy. It's San Diego, Boston. So it's a lot of other cities. And there's a lot of, I think the biggest thing holding us back there is that we don't have a major research institution. We don't have an MIT or Harvard. University of Texas bought 305 acres here a number of years ago to establish a number of things, but their intent was never to run U of H out or hire all their professors. It was to do data centers and life science. And I don't know if it's public or not, but the Texas Medical Center is in the process of assembling 500 acres just adjacent and south of the UT property to focus on getting a lot of these big pharma companies to establish life science operations here. So if we can just get going, it takes a lot of things. It takes the investment bankers, the attorneys, the deal makers. But I think the impetus is underway, and that would be a huge help for Houston.
Well, UT still has their 200 acres, don't they? Is it 200 or 400?
Yes, yeah, they still do, and they're they haven't determined what they're going to do with it. They've been trying to sell it, but they may keep and develop some of it. They haven't finalized any plans yet.
Pretty good site, and the opposition to that, I still don't understand. They it's like, hey, I think this is big enough for U of H and Texas and whatever. It was like, if we'd have pushed for that and gotten behind that and built that, that could be coming online right now.
Well, I mean, the city of Boston, Massachusetts, has about 85 public and private institutions of learning. Houston is a much larger city than Boston, and we have 4 or 5. So, I mean, there's and a growing population. So,
it's a big deal. Heinz's development there on Holcomb at the grocery supply site.
That was we were involved in us putting that venture together. That was a fun transaction to be involved with, because the family didn't want to do an outright sale. That they had sold grocery supply to another company, but they just felt attached to that land. So Levy Park is named after the family that's still involved in a venture with Heinz. And so it's fun to see these projects, actually develop into something other than the prior use. So it's fun to be involved in history as well.
Your bio says you've handled was it 14 billion in transactions career wise. That's a lot. That's a lot. So good.
Well, some of those were minor roles. Some of them I was the lead. It varied a lot, but the only product I haven't sold is a multifamily. But East River, which was the KBR site, was a fun transaction because that was the old Brown and Root site that they in World War II they built tanks over there. And it was 135 plus acres, 2 minutes from downtown, and it was they had some existing improvements, but in my lifetime I think somebody will build a multifamily project on the water to where someone could take a boat basically from their house or apartment to downtown. It'd be a fun 5 to 10 minute ride.
They've got to do it. They've got to do it.
So that would be tremendous. And well, we
are building multifamily there right now. They're building an office right now, and of course they just opened a 9-hole golf course, which is pretty
haven't
good.
played it. I hope they have helmets because if it's a pretty tight 9-hole golf course, some people might have some errant shots. But we
It
sold
looks
that to
great. It
William.
looks fantastic. And, our friend, architect Phil Shawley, who grew up here in Houston too, he did the architecture work on the place where the clubhouse and the restaurant are. And it came out pretty good. They took a whole ground rig building, redeveloped it, and it is very cool. I like it a lot. Phil did a great job on that.
So I'll give you a little color on a couple of these transactions that you never hear about. Like, for instance, that project, the KBR site, that actually sold to William Harrison, who's a young billionaire. At the time, I think he was under 30. And when I showed up for the tour, I got there a few minutes late, and I asked the security guard. I said, "Yeah, is this young gentleman showed up to tour the property?" He goes, "Yeah, he acted like he owned the place." I said, "I hope you were nice to him because we hope he does." And then he was smart enough to bring Midway in to help develop it, and they've got so much experience. But Boulevard Place, which is that mixed-use project at Post Oak and San Felipe, where the Whole Food is, our seller would only let us go to a few buyers, like 20 or 30. And Whitestone was a small public REIT based here in Houston, and they called and expressed interest, and I said, "I'm sorry, you're not on the list." And because they were looking for a game changer asset that they could increase their market capitalization to $1 billion. And so I'm like, "Well, you're not on the list. I'm sorry." And they said, "Look, you don't understand. Our CEO lives in the high rise across the street. He looks at that project every day, and he really wants to buy it." And I said, "Okay, that's a good reason." And they had to issue equity to buy it, but anyway, some interesting.
With Ed Wolf. Did Ed Wolf have a interest in that property?
Oh yeah, he was the major developer, and then Baylord was his equity partner. So yeah, Ed was.
Let me ask you a question about that. That I've heard this discussed, debated before, and I don't know, but some people say, well, you look across the street. Yes, you mentioned there is right across the street, major 40-story high rise that just was completed. There's other high rises right around it. It's it's a dense. So we're talking about Post Oak and San Felipe, a major corner in the Galleria area, and you say, well, Ed Wolf is a great developer, and God bless his soul. But he's, did he undershoot on that? Could he have gone higher, or bigger? Or, I mean, it's great to get the first Whole Foods in this area and everything like that, but could he have done more with that piece of property?
No, that's a good question, and it was definitely debated. I think he had, like, Whole Food originally was going to do an 80,000 foot store. They downsized it. They had so much money invested in plans, and then they had to redo them. But yeah, some people have said you could have developed more high-rise office, high-rise multifamily, because you got Hanover, behind it with a big high-rise where the office. So it probably could have, because in Houston you don't have height restrictions, but it's office and retail. And of course, Ed was involved in redeveloping Meyerland Plaza that we sold to a Dutch billionaire a number of years ago.
Yeah, you were involved in selling that property. I remember Ed Wolf told me when he bought Meyerland, which I guess was in the 90s, but he said, there's a major amount of hair on it, and the complications with, liens, all these liens here and there, all these ownership things, leases. I'm sure his legal fees were phenomenal on getting that unraveled. But you sold that property.
Yeah, but Ed did tell me when he was alive and when we were closing that deal that he probably would have been better off just scraping the whole thing. They kept where Bed Bath is. Now it's actually they're out, and
they're out. There was a
Dick's there, but that was one of the original structures. So they built new around existing, which is always tough to do. It would have been easier and cheaper, probably just scrape and do the whole thing all over again.
Well, Hassan has done pretty well with it. It looks, I mean, he's got, but at their last shakeout with some retailers departing, Bed Bath & Beyond among them, and of course Palais Royal. and this is a high profile center. If you don't know it, it's 610 at Beach Nut. Um, what is it? 80 acres or something like that. It's a pretty big piece of property. And
Yeah, it's a large community center with J.C. Penney, and of course I grew up and still live in Bel Air, and used to, as a kid, go and shop there, go to the cinema that used to be on the backside of it. So been there a long time, but it's it attracted a lot of interest. All these deals, we end up pitching against other firms, but I always try to emphasize I'm a native Estonian, and really passionate about being involved in these projects, and trying to explain to buyers, the uniqueness of and the attributes of each property. And one that I fell in love with, which brokers are not supposed to do. They're just supposed to execute, ask for the order, and execute, move on. But the Memorial Hermann Medical Plaza that we sold from Misher to LaSalle Investment Management, that was a medical building, at the corner of an intersection that will have an unobstructed view across Herman Park forever. And so it had credit and term, physically tied into the Memorial Herman main fortress campus across the street. And the more we showed it, the more I realized what a unique asset was. And Misher kept saying, hey, if we don't get the record number, we're not going to sell it. Well, it's still the record price per foot for Houston. It's over $800 a foot. But I agreed with him. I mean, if we didn't, I would have held it too. But anyway,
I remember interviewing you about that building. Was that 2018 or something like that when you sold it? In the Wall Street Journal reported a $400 million sale, which was the biggest medical office building sale in the nation at that time, they said, and
right.
Which is probably true. But and I remember you saying that how much you love that building, which of course is Rice University on one side, the medical center on the other, and then it's right there where the church is, the Palmer Church, and right across the street from that too. It's really like an ace #1 location.
Well, a lot of people that even grew up here and used to know realize the medical center is nonprofit. So everything east of Fannin has to be nonprofit, but west side of Fannin can be for profit. So that's why you have all those medical buildings on the west side, because they can be for profit, and a lot of them are owned by Methodist, and this was an event. Misher had Memorial Hermann as a tenant, but they were also a partner in the building, and so they did well on it. But
that was pretty good. Yeah. I think you told me it's like this. You not only did you love the building, but this was a monumental sale, and maybe a most significant deal you've done in your career.
You're only as good as your last deal in the real estate business.
That was a good one. That was a good one, man. So you've done a lot of big deals.
Well, let me tell you, it's not me. I've a team, and I've been with generally big companies that have a lot of resources, and people don't realize that on these transactions, you typically have a lead investment broker, but then you have what I call number 2 person that is putting together these proposals and the offering memorandums. And you have an analyst, you have a debt person to help arrange the debt, and then other people as well. So it's a total team effort. And I've had a great team over the years, and the last few years I've been focused mainly on industrial, which is interesting. Early in my career, JP Morgan, would come into town, other institutional people, and they'd have an hour presentation overview of Houston, the 4 major food groups. Well, industrial would get the last 30 seconds on the way out the door for 99% of my career. And then the last 3 years, the same group would come in, and then people go, what do you want to do? They go industrial #1, industrial #2, industrial #3. All our other guys would roll their eyes because they were sick of hearing it. I'm like, hey, it's our day in the sun. So, but multi has been right there too.
Yeah, multi, but you never touch multi.
No, that's the one product type that I didn't sell, but sold everything from a psych hospital to office and retail, a lot of retail, but retail is survived COVID and is actually, there's some sector rotation right now, money out of industrial and multifamily because it's gotten so pricey back into retail and office. And so, but there's certainly challenges right now in terms of the capital markets, the biggest being debt. And it's just math. So you're seeing prices, buyers adjust their pricing overnight. Sellers, there's a bid-ask gap right now. So the transaction volume is going to drop way down in the fourth quarter, which is historically the busiest quarter in the commercial real estate business around the country. But it's just because buyers can't pay as much. So pricing is off on core product 10 to 30%. And on value add, it could be off 20 to 40%. So typically there's a period where there's not much happening, and then people kind of try to meet in the middle or realize that interest rates are here to stay and they're going to stay up for a while. So it'll be
I don't know, I back to Houston office just for a second, but you'd like occupancy is high, and we don't know, buyers are few, and by now a lot of these loans are kind of getting ready to turn over, and so we've got what's going to happen. What do we think about the default situation? And I don't know if anybody banks may not want them back, but what about foreclosures and defaults in the Houston office right now? What's your information?
Well, they're probably going to increase because what people don't remember is, the office market's been tough for a while here, but a lot of those buildings had long-term leases with credit tenants. So, they were trying to sublease the space, but the owner still had credit term of energy companies in a lot of cases. But now those are starting to roll off. And so, it's going to be tough. And, a lot of lenders don't want to take a property back. Because that wasn't their original intent. They wanted to be the lender, not the owner. So they try to do workouts. But the fundamental problem is just not a lot of demand. And again, our biggest industry, oil and gas, has gotten more productive, figured out how to drill more wells with less people. And so
efficiency has its problems.
It's a tough industry. It's a capital intensive. They have no control over pricing. And, Houston's, we had, I think it was 2014, oil hit $30 a barrel. There were several times when oil has dropped way down and everybody was like, oh my God, here we go. Here comes the 80s again, but it didn't happen. And that really showed that we were more diversified as a city.
Yeah, I know. So, hey, well, you have helped me, a lot, over the years, and it's like I try to figure something out, and I've had great people around that would take my call and do an explanatory thing sometimes, and so I did want to say I really appreciate your help in recent decades.
Well, I know when you were a writer for the Chronicle, it's a tough position because you've got a blank piece of paper every day, and sometimes in the real estate business there's a lot happening, sometimes nothing's going on. And then there are other topics that are I guess topical, not just transactions and specific properties, but just issues. And of course, one of them that's nationally is this whole employment situation. You've got 10 million jobs, and a lot of people having a hard time filling them. Some of it's because our generation is starting to retire. I'm 67, retiring from real estate. I'm moving into a family business that I've been on the board of and a shareholder for many years. But a lot of people took early retirement with COVID, but that's CNBC had a series of things, and some of it's related to our immigration policy in the country right now. It's so restrictive. A lot of these really smart foreign people can't, stay here or can't. I think there's 16% success rate of applicants, for the visa applications. And, of course, now you got the tech industry starting to lay off people too. So that'll be interesting. I think one thing that's fun about real estate is every day is different. There is no typical day. And, you have to keep informed of all these trends because real estate just reflects what's happening in a city. As an example, I mean, here's Houston, 162 miles away in Austin, Texas, totally different economy. So real estate is local, but it's impacted by global trends like the financing. But, the three legs of Austin are tech, University of Texas, which is pretty stable, and state government, which is pretty stable. But tech has been on fire. Now you got a lot of those big companies that came from California. I've heard of several, Facebook and Google that signed long-term leases on brand new buildings, 600,000 feet, and not going to occupy the buildings. So
That new Google building right there on the town, or used to be Town Lake, but Ladybird Lake. That's a fantastic looking building, but and of course Apple's laying off. Got all the tech firms are and I've read just last night or today, Google may have some cutbacks too. That in this with the number of cranes on the skyline in Austin right now, their leasing's been phenomenal. Their construction's phenomenal. A lot of that's residential towers, but they're 80-story residential towers. It is a very hot market, and only 150 miles away or something. And you're right. We got a totally different picture. And so this is it. The 2022. You're leaving JLL at the end of the year. And then your family business, is it called Tamlyn Inc.? Is that?
Yes, Tamlyn. It's a business my parents started over 50 years ago in our backyard in Bel Air, believe it or not, in a shack, which you couldn't do today. But anyway, it's my brother Tom has been CEO and chairman, and he's retiring at the end of this year. So I got elected chairman. I'm going to be the non-executive chairman. Working with our president who runs the company day to day, but running the board meetings and setting the agenda and strategy and bigger picture type things. But it's in wholesale building materials, steel and aluminum related to single family, multifamily, which, we're anticipating a rough year or two because housing, we've got an issue in the United States where we have a shortage of housing, but not enough single family homes being built, but now you have an affordability issue because they've more than doubled the financing costs. So it's, less and less people can afford to buy a home. So it's going to impact our multifamily side of the business has held up well, but you're going to see cutbacks there as well. So never a dull moment. But yeah, I'm involved in budgeting and a compensation plan for our president. A lot of stuff I've never done in real estate. Hired a search consultant to hire a new controller who's retiring, those kind of things. But I'm excited, and hopefully that takes a day or two of time. But right now it's taking quite a bit of time as get set up for the next transition. But some of the changes that going back to real estate that I've seen over the last 40 years is technology. I mean, when I started, there weren't computers. I mean, I had 3x5 cards on all these companies and I hired a kid one summer when the computers came and to set up this database. But younger people today obviously use technology more than you and I do. But I do tell them, look, you don't hide behind that computer. Get in front of people. It's still a people business. I said, I use a computer, but I've never sold a piece of real estate to a computer. There's a person, and it's a relationship business. You've got to build up a good reputation, trust, value add, what kind of information you're providing to them to help them make decisions. So the a lot of them tend to text and email and never pick up the phone and call anybody or go see somebody. And so that old school way is actually still have a lot more impact. There's been more miscommunication between texting and emailing than any other form of communication.
Yeah, it's easy to not hear the nuance of their meaning and everything that they miss if it's just they may take what you say exactly wrong. Just day to day, okay, I'll meet you in 5 minutes. That's okay on a text, but some of this stuff needs to be verbalized.
Well, today there's so much noise and distractions and how people get information. Very few people get the printed copy of the paper today. I think Pittsburgh, as a major city in the United States, doesn't even have a printed edition of a newspaper anymore. So, but how do you separate fact from fiction? What's real and what's fake? Social media, the only social media I'm on is LinkedIn, and I sent a thing, saying I was retiring, what I was doing, and that was my first post on LinkedIn, and I had several hundred people respond to that. I was just shocked that, I don't know if it's people that follow me or what, but it's a tool that I haven't made that much use of, but certainly it's
LinkedIn's pretty. I did see your announcement about your retirement a couple of days ago or yesterday, and yes, I'm not surprised it got a lot of clicks and responses.
Well, I don't harbor any. I know the business is going to continue on, and it's me leaving the business is kind of like sticking your finger in a cup of water. I mean, I'll be forgotten soon thereafter, but try
we will not be forgotten. Right?
Well, it was shocking how many people that I guess helped get in the industry, not just at companies I was with, but just in other sectors that remember and have sent me emails and called, and so that's been heart rendering because our industry needs a lot of good young people. So, and it's been a good ride.
Yeah, well, it has been, and we want to keep hearing from you and what's going on at Tamlyn Inc. and we'll stay in touch. Okay.
That sounds great. All right, Ralph. Thank you much.
See you, Russ.
You bet. Bye.